At exactly 7:12 p.m. on a Wednesday, I found myself staring at flashing red and blue lights reflecting off my living room window. The kind of lights that make your stomach drop, even when you know you've done nothing wrong. 3 police cruisers sat outside my townhouse, their engines humming like angry hornets. An officer stepped out, his boots crunching over the gravel, and knocked on my door. Hard. The kind of knock you feel in your chest. "Sir, open up. We've received a report of tampering with community communications infrastructure." Behind him stood Karen Holt, our HOA vice president, self-appointed queen of the cul-de-sac, sworn defender of bylaws, and the most exhausting human being I've ever met. Her short blonde bob looked lacquered into place, and her face had that permanent frown of someone who's never been told no. In one hand, she held her tablet, her weapon of choice, with the HOA app open, ready to record evidence of my alleged crimes. I wasn't panicking, mostly because I already knew this had to do with one thing: my Wi-Fi. See, I had turned it off. That's all, not because of technical issues or hacking or anything dramatic. I just wanted peace, a quiet evening, a book, some tea, no pings, no notifications. But apparently, peace and quiet are crimes in Meadow Ridge Estates. My name is Ethan. Cole, I've lived here for 4 years. I bought this townhouse after my divorce because I thought it'd be a nice, calm neighborhood. You know, dog walkers, barbecues, and people who wave politely but don't pry. Then I met Karen. Karen believes that running the HOA gives her a divine mandate to control everything within a 200-yard radius, including Wi-Fi signals, trash bin placement, and apparently what brand of mulch you're allowed to use. I used to laugh it off until she started targeting me. The first warning. It started small. One morning, I found a note taped to my front door written in the most passive-aggressive handwriting imaginable. Per HOA Regulation 4.3b, visible router cables near windows are considered unsightly. Please correct within 48 hours to avoid a $75 fine. She had somehow seen the tiny Ethernet cable peeking from behind my curtain. That meant she'd been looking through my window. I ignored it. 2 days later, I got an official citation in my mailbox, with a picture of the cable attached. That's when I realized this wasn't just nosiness. This was surveillance. The surveillance escalates. Over the next few weeks, Karen found a new violation every other day. Unapproved SSID, name, too suggestive. My Wi-Fi was named Pretty Fly for Wi-Fi. Router light visible after 10 p.m., light pollution hazard. Laptop visible through window, possible home business operation. She even came by during one of her so-called safety patrols, walking around with a little gadget in her hand, muttering like she was on a mission from the CIA, unauthorized network interference, possible signal leak. She whispered into her phone as I watched from my porch. It was surreal. Then one evening she accused me in the community group chat of hacking HOA security cameras. Wait, what cameras? Turns out Karen had convinced the HOA board to install cheap knockoff surveillance cameras on the streetlights and trees for neighborhood safety. And to save money, she'd connected them to nearby residents' Wi-Fi networks, without asking. Mine included. The day I finally snapped. After receiving my third fine in a week for failure to maintain network stability, I lost it. That night, I went to my router, looked at the blinking lights like they were judging me, and said out loud, "Not tonight, Karen." I flipped the switch off. For the first time in months, silence. No hums, no pings, no data drain. Just peace. I made a cup of chamomile tea, opened a mystery novel, and sat back to enjoy the quiet. Minutes later, chaos at 7:03 p.m. I heard the first siren, 7:05. 3 patrol cars were idling outside my townhouse. By 7:06, Karen was outside screaming into her phone. When I opened my door, she pointed at me like she was unmasking a villain on live TV. That's him. He shut down the community network. The doorbell cameras are offline. Emergency communications are compromised. The officer blinked, visibly confused. Ma'am, are you saying he turned off his Wi-Fi? It's our Wi-Fi, she shrieked. The HOA mesh system relies on his signal. At that point, even the officer's partner tried not to laugh. The accusation escalates. Karen wasn't backing down. She stormed up my walkway, waving her tablet like a badge. He's using a signal jammer. He's endangering lives. The children's smart doorbells aren't responding. The officer held up his hand. Ma'am, please step back. But she wasn't having it. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small plastic stick, something that looked suspiciously like a vape pen. This, she said proudly, is the HOA-issued signal booster. It keeps the mesh network stable. The officer took it from her, turned it over, and frowned. Ma'am, this device isn't certified. It's transmitting on restricted frequencies. Her expression froze. The binder of Dumai went back inside, calm as could be, and came out holding my binder. Yes, a full binder. 'Cause when you live under HOA tyranny, you learn to document everything. Inside were photos of her cameras zip-tied to streetlights, router logs showing strange connections labeled Meadow Eye 1, Meadow Eye 2, printouts of every bogus citation I'd received, and a draft of a cease and desist letter I'd written just in case this day ever came. I handed the binder to the officer and said, "You might want to start here," they read. They raised eyebrows. They started murmuring into their radios. The tech unit arrived within 20 minutes. The truth unfolds it. It didn't take long. The tech officer plugged into my router and confirmed that multiple unknown devices had been leaching bandwidth, all tied to the HOAs. Community safety cameras. They also found Karen's so-called signal booster was, in fact, a non-certified transmitter that could disrupt local Wi-Fi channels, a violation of FCC regulations. They bagged it as evidence. One officer turned to Karen and asked flatly, "Ma'am, did you personally install or authorize these devices?" Karen hesitated, then said, "The HOA board approved it." Except she was the board. The rest of them had quit months ago because they couldn't stand her. The fallout begins. By the next morning, word had spread faster than wildfire. Half the neighborhood showed up at the emergency HOA meeting, which was held in the community center. Every seat was filled. Karen sat at the front table, her hair still perfect but her expression brittle. She had brought a lawyer this time, which told everyone exactly how bad things were. The HOA attorney read from a clipboard like a funeral director announcing charges. Unauthorized surveillance installation on private and public property, illegal bandwidth use from resident networks, violation of federal communications law, and a false emergency call to 911 when he got to that last one. Several neighbors gasped. Then he projected Karen's emails on the big screen behind him. One read, "If residents don't opt in, we'll default them into the mesh network manually." Another, "Ethan Cole's resistance sets a dangerous precedent. We must make an example." You could feel the collective outrage ripple through the room. Justice served. When it came time to vote on her removal, it wasn't even close. 43-1, and that one was her. The board stripped her of her title, suspended her HOA privileges, and ordered the immediate removal of every unauthorized camera and device. Then came the real consequences. City code enforcement fined her $8,000 for illegal installations on public property. The state telecommunications office fined her $5,000 for the uncertified transmitter. The police cited her for misuse of emergency services, a misdemeanor carrying a potential $1,000 fine and 6 months in jail. As the list of penalties grew longer, Karen's face cycled through every emotion: disbelief, rage, humiliation. Finally, she slammed her binder shut, muttered, "You'll regret this," and stormed out of the room. The door slammed so hard the community center exit sign rattled. For a full 5 seconds, the room was silent, and then everyone started clapping. The aftermath over the next few weeks, the neighborhood changed. Without Karen's surveillance empire looming over us, people actually started smiling again. The HOA board reformed under new leadership. Normal, decent folks who cared more about fixing potholes than spying on roaders. The cameras were taken down, the fines were rescinded, and the constant tension that had hung over Meadow Ridge finally lifted. As for me, I became something of a local hero. Neighbors would wave and say, "Hey, Wi-Fi guy," when I walked my dog, and occasionally someone would joke, "Don't make Ethan turn off his router again. We might lose power this time." I didn't mind. After all, I'd earned it. Karen's final curtain a few months later, I heard she sold her townhouse and moved to another HOA community a few towns over. Rumor has it, she tried to run for the board there too, but the background check came up with all her fines and violations from Meadow Ridge. They rejected her application instantly, and poetic justice being what it is, I later learned that her new home's internet provider has a reputation for spotty Wi-Fi. Guess some lessons take a weak signal to sink in. Final thoughts. Sometimes, justice doesn't come in courtrooms or through big speeches. Sometimes, it comes from the simple satisfaction of turning off your router and watching a control-obsessed HOA Karen's entire world crumble because of it. So, yeah, Karen lost it when I turned off my Wi-Fi. She called 911. And what happened next? Well, let's just say, it was unbelievable.